Hey guys, Red Gambit here, and I'm coming to you with a little bit of a rant on some rather sad and disturbing news regarding the playable teaser demo that was on PlayStation 4. Now, I say was because if you're anything like me, you woke up this morning and checked your Twitter feed and found out that Konami are actually pulling PT from the PlayStation Store on April 29th. Doing a little bit of digging, I found out, along with many other people, that Del Toro, who was involved with Kojima on the title, stated at a conference yesterday, or a panel, that the game is cancelled, that it's done, that it's not going to happen, and it breaks his greasy heart. Those are his words. That was quickly followed up by Norman Reedus, and he also stated that the project has been cancelled, so the only people who have yet to comment on this are Konami themselves. One can only assume this is obviously a result of the apparent falling out between Kojima and Konami themselves. So what do we know? Well, first of all, we do know that Kojima Productions, which is the production company headed by Hideo Kojima, has been dissolved and absorbed back into Konami itself. Secondly, all Kojima branding has been removed from both the Phantom Pain and social media websites. And lastly, as far as we know from Konami, Kojima is still committed to the company up until the release of Phantom Pain, but beyond that, it's anyone's guess. So for all intents and purposes, the project does appear to be dead and buried, with only Konami themselves left to put the final nail in the coffin. Now let me tell you why this sucks. First and foremost, I am a huge fan of the Silent Hill franchise. I've been a very big fan of Silent Hill since I played Silent Hill 2 on the PS2. I know a lot of people are very big fans of Silent Hill 2. I am definitely absolutely as well, and I'll get into that in a moment. I will say, however, that actually my favorite is actually Silent Hill 3, which is another much loved entry in the series, but is a little bit behind Silent Hill 2 in terms of overall popularity. To me, they're both fantastic games. They're both great. They both follow a very similar structure. I think that Silent Hill 2 was probably the originator. It obviously had the iconic character of Pyramid Head in it. I just really kind of appreciate Silent Hill 3 a little bit more, just for more of its environments, the atmosphere. It's just a little bit more twisted, a little bit more crazy than Silent Hill 2. But overall, they are both truly fantastic and amazing games, and I'll tell you why. Up until the release of Silent Hill, and more importantly Silent Hills 2 and 3, the survival horror genre was basically clouded with rip-offs of Resident Evil. That's really all that there was. There was Alone in the Dark, there was Dino Crisis, there was all kinds of other games, but they all followed the same formula of basically just giving you limited ammunition and relying on you to run around and kill things. And Silent Hill 2 was really the first game to break the mold on that. It was a game which didn't rely on how terrifying the monsters looked. It didn't rely on how big teeth they had, or how much blood there was, or whether they had strange protrusions or anything like that. Instead, the characters and the monsters themselves were all very nondescript. They were mannequin-esque, they were featureless, and they just moved in very strange and unnerving ways. Much of this was a result of the fact that Konami had hired psychologists to work as consultants on the game, and each of the monsters was actually meant as a representation of James, the protagonist's psyche. Monsters like the nurses were made to represent James's frustrated sexuality from the fact that his wife was dead and long gone, whereas more standard enemies were made to look more restricted and confined, as if wearing straitjackets. Silent Hill 3 took those premises and built upon them. It was set in the same town, but featured a new protagonist named Heather, and went on to follow many of the same cues that it took up from Silent Hill 2. Enemies were strange, nondescript, and terrifying, as well as this time including more of the environment itself as being an enemy. Perhaps what made games like this great wasn't the fact that you had to fight enemies or solve puzzles, but it was just the actual town itself, the ominous, oppressive nature of Silent Hill. One of my favorite moments from Silent Hill 3 was neither fighting an enemy or a boss or anything like that. It was just simply walking into a room, seeing your reflection, and then turning to leave and finding yourself locked in the room. The room itself featured a large mirror which you could see your own reflection in, and after a few short seconds, your reflection stopped following you and simply stared at you instead. From that point forward, blood slowly filled the room and drained your health until you were able to escape, and that to me is just the definition of creativity. It's taking chances, it's doing something new. You could spend the entire game not going into that room and it wouldn't make a difference, but the fact that it was there just made it all the more unnerving to me. Now, because Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3 were so great, we've been waiting. Us, the patient Silent Hill fans, have been waiting for a decent Silent Hill game since Silent Hill 3. Silent Hill 4 was actually not a Silent Hill game at all. It was in development at Konami, and it was completely different. It was titled as a different IP altogether, and it was only halfway through development that Konami decided they could make more money if they slapped the Silent Hill brand on top of it. For that reason, the game has very little to do with Silent Hill at all. It's a game basically where you're trapped in your apartment and have to travel to a town which might be Silent Hill, it may not be, all the while being attacked by ghosts that are actually unkillable up until the very last part of the game. From Silent Hill 4 onwards, Konami actually handed development to Western companies, which unfortunately just didn't have a grasp of what made Silent Hill so great. Silent Hill 5 Homecoming was a pale imitation of the games that had preceded it, and while at least it was trying to pay homage to the games that had come before it, unlike Silent Hill 4, to me it committed the worst crime that a Silent Hill game possibly could, and that was to leave me as a player feeling bored. It was unimaginative, it was drab, it was bland, and the appearances by Silent Hill and Pyramid Head just felt tacked on and needless. I haven't even played Silent Hill Downpour or the Wii spin-off due to the poor reviews they garnered upon release, which has left me over these many years wanting, waiting, hoping for a decent Silent Hill game to come along, and finally PT looked like it may be that game. And now, unfortunately, we will never know. Now, to me, the worst part of all this isn't the fact that PT has been removed from the PlayStation Store and Silent Hills has been cancelled. Instead, I feel like this is an actual attack on creativity itself. Think about this for a moment. In a world where we're inundated with Call of Duty games and endless Assassin's Creed sequels, this was the first game in a long time to get gamers across the board genuinely excited about something new and different. PT reimagined what survival horror was, and had gamers all around the world perplexed as they hunted for a way to complete the demo together. That to me is what made it so great. Developers aren't prepared to take a chance on new IPs when development costs for AAA titles are so high. So for PT and Silent Hills to come out of nowhere like they did felt like very much a breath of fresh air to all of us. And lastly, this may not even be the worst part or the last of what we'll be hearing about this. After all, if Kojima really is leaving Konami after Phantom Pain, what does that mean for Metal Gear Solid Rising 2? If Konami are indeed so eager to scrap projects that Kojima has been involved in, the sword of Damocles may be bearing down upon its head as well. Anyways, that's it for me guys. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that you, like me, can find some solace in discussing this and talking about what might have been with PT. So please, if you do have any thoughts, leave a comment below, leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see all of you on the channel very soon.